any successful story that you've ever heard about, landscape-wise or anything else, will always have this behind it. Would you like to know what it is? Stick with me. I'm glad you're here. Let's get going. Not only in landscapes, and that's obviously what we talk about here, but if you think about it, think about these names, and we will tie it to landscaping here in just a second. Let's look at Henry Ford, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, Tony Robbins, Sam Walton, Ray Kroc. Any of these people should bring to mind very high levels of success, but they wouldn't be anything that history has made them out to be without this. And neither have any of my landscapes that I've ever had as a homeowner or any landscape that I've ever put in. It's the supporting cast of elements behind the scenes that make it all happen. Those guys wouldn't be what they are. They wouldn't be the richest man in the world, the most successful car maker ever in history so far, if they did not have a very strong supporting cast. Well, I'll tell you what, in our and your small circle of influence, your home, you too should have a strong supporting cast of elements that make your landscape function, look healthy, vibrant, and the flagship in the neighborhood. Front yard, backyard, it does not matter. If you do not have these, you tend to have the average yard, one that is solely reliant on just whatever Mother Nature brings it. And in some cases, that's okay. But if you're one of those people, kind of like me, that wants to have an above average yard, and certainly one that always is at its peak of health, you need these supporting cast members. And if you don't think a landscape doesn't need a supporting cast, check this out. For any of my viewers or listeners down in Southern California, maybe Arizona, maybe even the Central Valley of California, West, North, and East Texas, Utah, some of the drier parts of Oregon, certainly Nevada. If you did not have a supporting cast that took care of the landscape when you're doing your 9 to 5, or when you're gone for a weekend, or when you're gone for a vacation, what would it be like? Let's take Southern California as an example. What would happen if your landscape that looks fantastic when you're there, you take a business trip for 2 weeks and you don't water? You don't water for 2 weeks. What would your landscape look like? Say, for instance, you're hosting a dinner party and your landscape has always been the one that everyone oohs and ahs about. And you have an evening dinner party, and all of a sudden, the lighting outside that takes care of all the ambiance after the sun goes down ain't working. It's just a dark backyard. These supporting elements, such as irrigation, such as lighting, such as even down to the actual tools and machinery that take care of it, is your supporting cast that makes that landscape pop. And the most important supporting cast member is going to be at the end of this podcast and the end of this video. But like any good corporation, you got to take care of your supporting cast members. If they are never recognized, if they are never maintained, if they are never replaced or repaired, your supporting cast tends to downsize, move on, break down, become disgruntled, non-functioning, poorly functioning. And the next thing you know, your landscape corporation, so to speak, is on the verge of going over that edge, just becoming that house on the block. And we don't want that. So let's take care of our supporting cast elements, shall we? The first one we're going to talk about is irrigation. Irrigation is not applicable to everybody, but even up here in the northern reaches of Maine where I'm at, There was times last summer where I wish I had an irrigation system. We had mid-August to mid-September, we didn't have any rain. None. Now granted, there's a lot of groundwater in our area here at Brook and Pond, but when you're talking about an organic topsoil level that's only a couple 3 inches deep at most, that lawn started to dry up. And me coming from the West Coast where lawns were kind of a deal and a lawn is always irrigated 99% of the time, all of a sudden I found myself using some supporting elements to keep the grass green. As far as your irrigation system, one of the things I really suggest is you have 2 times a year maintenance. If you have a very vibrant, healthy, and robust type of irrigation system and landscape, you may have to bump that up to 3 or 4 times a year. I know at Weed Patch Ranch, the lawns that I had, they were a dwarf fescue blend. They called it Bolero. And it had bluegrass, ryegrass, and dwarf fescues in it. It was really designed for the hot Central Valley of California. And in the spring and early summertime, it was a beast. 2 times a week mowing, minimum. And I had to go in there and always check the sprinkler heads themselves. Why? Because the grass was so healthy that it would start to overtake and grow around the sprinkler head. So at least twice a year, and I can remember doing it 3 and 4 times, I would have to go in with a little landscape knife and I would have to cut around each sprinkler head. And then when I string trimmed, I would have to string trim off the area right in front and to the sides of the pop-up heads or the rotors so that I got clearance when it activated. And if you don't do that, if you let it grow up and over, you just mow, and then when the sprinklers come on, they come on, you tend to end up with problems as far as roots and other things grabbing on to the shaft of the pop-up of the sprinkler, or the rotor head doesn't quite turn, or worst case scenario is the grass starts to grow up so tall there that there's no dispersal, there's no spray pattern anymore. So part of supporting that irrigation system that takes care of your landscape, you need to go out and check that and keep it clear. The other thing is the valves. Oftentimes people who are very busy people don't check the irrigation system every week or every month or even in a year. And sometimes you can have problems with freezing and thawing. You didn't winterize. A rat or a mouse got into your solenoid wires and chewed one of them, so it's not working. And we don't know it until things start to go bad because we haven't inspected it. So we have to go out and check those. Timers. Timers are something that you need to check at least 4 times a year based on the amount of sun, the amount of daylight, the amount of heat and cold, etc. Obviously, we're going to turn them off in the winter most of the time, depending on where you're located. But for the most part, you need to adjust the timer as far as start and stop times. You need to make sure that you're watering at the optimum time of day or evening. For me, it was always 6 o'clock in the morning. Maestro would get up and go to work and she'd be gone long before 6 o'clock. So I wasn't interrupting any sort of water ability to take showers or baths or whatever. And it would come on before the sun was high in the sky, so I know I got the most soak in, the most watering depth every time the sprinklers came on. And on the opposite end of that spectrum is I had a rain sensor. Rain sensors because in California, with droughts and Big Brother always monitoring with sprinkler police and that kind of stuff, we always had to have the ability for the system not to come on when the heavens did open up. And it's funny because the city was the worst at the whole thing. You'd drive around town when it was pouring cats and dogs, and because Public Works didn't go out and shut the system off or have a rain sensor, they were there with the sprinklers going full blast in one of the parks or on one of the boulevard medians. And everybody would just scratch their head going, WTH, you're hanging violations on people's front doors because they had a little bit of water in the gutter, and here you are watering in a rainstorm. It was really kind of stupid, in my opinion. But rain sensors really save money because you're not running water if you're on a municipal system. And it also allows Mother Nature's water to water and not groundwater or whatever else you're using. Take care of that irrigation system. Your irrigation system is probably in the top 3. I would say the top 2 if you need an irrigation system that's going to take care of your landscape. And you're going to have to dial it in so that it is working in an optimum type of fashion so that your landscape, whatever you have out there, is getting the premium amount of moisture when it needs it, how it needs it. In your planting beds, your flower beds, etc., maybe you're not running spray heads. Maybe you're running a drip irrigation system. And you need to check your emitters probably twice a year. Rodents, especially in a dry, arid environment, find a water source in a drip irrigation, and they will be there chewing on your emitters more frequently than you probably realize. And so you need to go out and double check them. Again, sometimes we don't realize that the drip system isn't working correctly until we have ponding and pooling because something broke, or something is wilting and dying because the system has clogged somehow. Take care of your irrigation system and it will take care of you. All right, moving on to another very important supporting cast element of a landscape, and that is the drainage. I have talked myself blue in the face in the past 5 years about how important water management is in a home residential landscape. You have to be able to control it. I talked to a lady down in North Carolina this past week, and she was having trouble with drainage issues. And we talked and we figured out exactly what needs to be done, and more importantly, the why. She suffered from Hurricane Helene, and her creek, which is normally a nice babbling brook, was a raging torrent that eroded banks and swept riparian area away, and now she's left with kind of a chasm and a lot of exposed river cobble and stuff. So we talked about ways to take care of her system there, and also addressed issues as far as downspouts and drainage systems and drainage swales so that she can manage the water, because although they do get normal rainfall, there are times when they get deluges. And Hurricane Helene was just the icing on a horrific scenario, a perfect storm scenario, because 3 days prior to, they had 3 days of heavy, heavy rain, then Hurricane Helene came in. And you can imagine, it was a nightmare scenario. But for our average run-of-the-mill residential home, we need to manage that water. So we have to manage it starting at the roof line. Our supporting cast, remember? We manage the water starting at the roof line with a gutter system, and then we manage it once it hits ground level. And that could be French drain systems, it could be corrugated drain systems or PVC drain systems, it could be sump pumps and discharge lines. All of this is put in place so that when the heavens do open up and it's 2 a.m. and you can hear that rain on the roof, you can sleep at night. And things don't get flooded out and things don't get washed away because you have put the system in place to take care of it. And if not, then it tends to get overloaded with flooded water and anaerobic situations and foundation problems, etc. So your drainage system is in the top 3 important parts of maintaining your optimum landscape. Another supporting cast element, and some people have this and some people farm it out, but I'm going to caution you on the farming it out. And that is your landscaping tools, your power equipment, mowers, rotary mowers or ride-on mower, pruning tools, chainsaws if necessary, lawn aerators, sod removals, dethatchers. All of these supporting cast elements don't have to be always owned by a homeowner. You can always go and rent them, but they're a supporting cast that allows you to take care of, maintain, rejuvenate, reseed, top dress, prune, haul off, and take care of a landscape correctly and certainly easily. There's the days of pushing mowers, like I learned. I learned to push a mower across the lawn. And those days are kind of gone unless you have something that's maybe a bent grass putting green or something that you could still use a reel mower. But those even have power reel mowers nowadays that can be used. In any case, your tool system, your rakes, your shovels, your hoes, weed eaters, all of those equipment needs to be maintained. I know this winter, because of ice and snow, our scoop shovels, our snow shovels, my tractor, our snow blower, they were all dialed in late October, early November. And to this date, everything's working fine. Even though JD, the tractor, kind of coughs and sputters and has a problem starting because it's diesel in really cold temperatures. I have to maintain the battery. I have to put in diesel fuel treatment so that it doesn't gel up. And once it gets going, it's fine. It's just a little hard to get going in the wintertime. Same thing with our daily truck, O'Grave. You know, he's always in the garage this year, thank goodness. And he gets plugged in on the super cold nights, especially if we're going to town the next day. And no problems. So we take care of the things that take care of our landscape. And as long as that supporting cast element, our power tools, our hand tools, all of those things are in good working order, you will be better off for it, and so will the landscape. One of the things that I would say more than 50% would be, I think, a reasonable good guesstimate. More than 50% of the homeowners never do this. And I'm not exactly sure why. Maybe because you can, in this day and age where budgets are tight, maybe it's just not it's not in the top 10 of where your monthly income has to go. And I'm speaking to fertilization. A lot of people, they'll put a landscape in or have one put in, and it looks great for that first 12 to 24 months. And then they just don't feed it. They don't get out there and put some additives in the soil and cultivate and remulch and keep things vibrant and new. And you've probably seen them. Those, oh wow, look what the Smiths did landscape-wise a couple years ago. And then the Smiths landscape this year is just kind of that lipstick has worn off and nobody ever reapplies. And oftentimes with turf, smaller shrubs and perennials, certainly annuals, trees as they mature are much harder. You have to root feed them or trunk feed them. You have to systemically feed them because oftentimes feeder roots can be down a ways. So I used to use a Ross root feeder, which I will put a link below. And what they did was I was able to put pelletized fertilizer 2 and 3 feet down in the ground. And I mainly did that with a lot of my smaller fruit trees and the berry line. I did it with those as well. The big tree, we didn't have any big trees at Weed Patch Ranch. And the trees that we have here at Brook and Pond, I will do it again this year for the Parkland Pillar Birches, but I don't know what other trees we're going to have out in the front area, but I guarantee you I will be applying a fertilizing program there to keep everything as nice as possible. It tends to be kind of an insurance policy against problems that might crop up. A weaker, hungry type of plant is much more susceptible to diseases and insects and invasion than a robust, healthy plant, just like humans are. You know, the healthier you are, you're able to ward off flus and colds and diseases and cancers and all those kinds of things from ruining your life. Same thing goes in the plant world too. So a fertilizing program is always a very good checklist that you should maintain probably about a minimum of twice a year. For turf, I'll refer you to the 412 video that we did a long time ago regarding lawn maintenance and lawn care. 412, where you're fertilizing 4 times a year, you're cutting once a week, and you're aerating every 2 years. And that really keeps a lawn vibrant. And it is a very, very easy one to remember, 412. Just remember that. So fertilizing is something that I suggest that you invest in so that your landscape always is that, how do you always keep your stuff so healthy looking type of landscape. Now, for a luxury item, not everybody has this, but for a luxury item, your lighting system is something that a lot of people have a very big honeymoon effect with. They have it put in, it's part of their landscape install, and then they tend to forget about it, especially those systems that are still on incandescent type of bulbs and not the LED bulbs, which I strongly suggest. Your cabling, although usually safe underground, gophers do have a way of coming in some parts of the country, and they will nibble. Ground squirrels, rats and mice, they're kind of attracted to the electromagnetic system that goes through the landscape wires, and they will tend to chew some of the plastic or rubber casing on it. Incandescent bulbs, 5 years or less. LED bulbs, 3 to 9 years per bulb. But you have to go out and turn it on. And you have to turn it on probably twice a year and inspect every single one. And when you're doing this, a whole bunch of other things come to mind. You're out there in the landscape, number one, and you're inspecting lights. You're looking at the fixture, you're looking at the connections, is everything working? You've reset your timer. If you're on a photocell, not so important, but if you're on a mechanical timer, you may have to readjust for the daylight savings or the amount of night versus day as the season progresses. But when you're out there checking these things, it's also a great time to check the irrigation, check the plant material, and check other elements of the landscape that may be needing it. You might see weeds that are coming in or blowing in. When it comes to your timer and transformer, it's always a good idea to open that box up, check your mechanical timer, look at the electrical components inside. Spiders, wasps, bees sometimes like to get up inside there and create nests, and it's always a good idea to keep that cleaned out. And if you can, I would suggest some type of plumber's putty or something on the inside where the cables come up inside. Put a little plumber's putty around that cable hole and seal it so there's no access to get up inside. So lighting is another way to get you out into the landscape, inspecting not just the lights and the system, but all the other elements as well. So let's wrap this up with the single most important supporting cast member in a landscape. And you could probably figure it out. It's you. If you don't make any efforts whatsoever to support the landscape investment that you have outside, you are going to allow it to deteriorate. You will allow the irrigation system to break down or have problems, the lighting, the drainage, all these supporting cast elements of your landscape is managed and controlled and driven by you. You have to become disciplined enough and to put a checklist together or a dry erase board in the garage or in the shed to check yourself before you wreck yourself when it comes to your landscape elements. It's not that hard. It is so much easier to do little bites of that landscape elephant, little bites here and there, than be faced with, oh my God, I've got 2 weekends worth of irrigation repairs that I have to do. Left to your own devices, bad habits can creep in. And I have seen people who have invested tens upon tens upon tens of thousands of dollars into large, beautiful landscapes, only to have a left turn in life, and all of a sudden the landscape is not a priority anymore. May I make a suggestion? Is if you have a large landscape and it is more than you realized as far as taking care of it. Reevaluate your lifestyle at that particular time and what's coming up in the years to come. Do you have too much home and too much yard to care for? Do you need to downsize? In the case that we have here at Brook and Pond, we have strategically orchestrated our landscape to fit our lifestyle. I'm in my mid-60s now, and Maestro's in her mid-50s. And we don't want to have every single day being wrapped around the landscape. We'd like to automate everything and have the ability to jump in the truck and the camper and take off for a month and not have to worry about it. Hence the reason the lawn is going to be downsized tremendously this year. These are the things that people want to clutch onto and hang on to forever, when if you just think it out a little bit, you might be able to downsize. The other thing is you can always farm it out. But farm it out if you're going to do it. Because if you just let it go, all you're doing is hurting your property values, the neighborhood, your self-esteem, etc. So why not take care of it if you're going to stay there? Make sure it always has its best foot forward. And that supporting cast member of that vibrant, healthy landscape that you want to brag about and that people ooh and ah over is totally up to you, the homeowner. So if you can't do it all, farm some of it out. Just remember, when you farm out to a commercial organization, you have to be very specific as far as what you want done. Because whoever comes in there, if they have free reign, you're only going to get the minimum and you're going to pay the maximum. You're going to end up with green meatballs. You're going to end up with a mowed lawn. I guarantee you they're not going to take care of irrigation sprinkler heads unless you specifically ask for it and be prepared to pay for those extra services. You can have professionals come in and rotate color. You can have them remove and replant things. You just have to pay for it. So, our supporting cast in our landscape, irrigation, drainage, lighting, tools, and you, is what's going to make that landscape pop for years and decades. I really value the supporting cast that we have here at Brook and Pond and what we had at Weed Patch Ranch. I would never have been a hose dragger at Weed Patch Ranch. I mean, my gosh, I had 2.5 acres to take care of. I don't have that much hose, nor did I ever want to take care of something that big at the end of a hose. So an irrigation system was mandatory, not just necessary. I hope you got a little something out of this. I really do. It is something that we don't often think about, but taking care of those behind the scenes elements of a landscape success story, much like the corporate world and the global world where you see people very successful, it's because of everything that is behind the scenes, and the face of the corporation is out front with their thumbs there going, see how successful I am. Well, you wouldn't be crap unless you took care of the elements and the people behind the scenes, huh? Same goes for your landscape. Guys, as always, I invite you over to the website. I'd love for you to take a look at some of the products and services. And if you have any questions, we're only email away. youryardcoach@gmail.com. Hey, I'll see you guys next week. As always, I appreciate your time. And as always, to your landscape success. And I'll say goodbye for now.